Hello everyone, I'm Ankshita, I'm from Mauritius, and yes, this is the second time that someone from Mauritius is coming, and it's me again. But it's not my fault, you guys are extremely warm, maybe the warmest hacking community I've ever met, and I've only met two, so I'm rating you guys on the first. Sorry. So my session is actually a continuation from a workshop I did this morning, and it was about reverse engineering a ransomware sample. So the ransomware that I've chosen for this purpose is TeslaCrypt. If you know, TeslaCrypt is not that well documented, so I've created some documentation on my own. And now this part is only about analyzing the forensic traces of this ransomware. So I'm just going to go through some minor contents of this workshop, this session. So I'm going to show what was the infection analysis, some privilege and token analysis that this malware had once it had infected my VM, some legitimate processes that I came across while investigating the forensic artifacts. And then I was investigating the deleted files, installed programs, and what was the result at the end. Okay? So I'm going to start. So as you see, this image was actually taken from the infected VM itself. I don't know if you can see the image very clearly, but it's actually an executable file which is being shown here. And you see that the file name, the process is actually a random looking file. And it was spawned by the Explorer.exe, okay, and immediately caused CPU spikes on my VM, the IO spikes, because it basically launched several other child processes in the way, okay. And these are generally classic indicators of a dropped userland payload. So as soon as I got that, I had isolated my VM and preserved the disk so I could continue my analysis. So I'm going to move on. This is generally the privilege and token analysis of this malicious process. So if you would see this, the name, or I would say the source is some NAH app, and it's not really legitimate, if I can say that. And you would see that it had only been 14 minutes and it was already trying to escalate privileges. So this second screenshot generally gives a very strong evidence in terms of the token and privilege management or access that this malware had. So as you can see, it has there are some processes which are running. It is not an administrator right now. It has limited privileges, but it's trying to elevate. And it had some, so basically, it had some privileges which were some high-risk privileges, such as shut down the system and changing the time zone, were disabled by default. And this is lucky because it was not able to change that. But you can still see that it still tried to change some mandatory functions. So generally, as a conclusion, this malware process is just running under the current user and not as the administrator. That is why it cannot really escalate any privileges. But it's trying to rely on persistence and network activity rather than the kernel access. Okay? So, generally, these kind of malware, it's, as you already know, it's capable of stealing data and encrypting files accessible to the user, but it cannot modify system-wide security settings because I had already disabled that. Now, I'm going to move on into my investigation. So all of the investigation screenshots that you will see henceforth are from Autopsy, okay? I use Autopsy because the reverse engineering that I did was on a Windows VM, so I suppose it was much easier and much easier for the purpose. Now, some files which are present in the main window here were actually flagged as encrypted. Why? Because it's actually the active Windows credential storage. Okay. Now this is a legitimate process. I did try to match the timestamps from the malware activity, and it was matching my malware timeline. Means that the malware had tried to access and create credentials. Maybe it was trying to, of course, escalate privileges. Maybe trying to create an admin access on the system, but it could not. So there it is. Also, I didn't find any executable, I didn't find any DLL or strange binary blobs. So basically it means that this, so Windows Credential Locker remained clean, or I would say it was still a legitimate process. So this is one thing that I was trying to see. The next thing I went to was the deleted files. So I'm not sure if you can actually see that, but in the first image you would see about 4,000 deleted files already. And now, generally, just investigating that on a clean VM where I had only done like basic investigation of reverse engineering, it is a bit suspicious because I'm not really deleting anything. It's just the malware that is infecting my entire VM and the entire system. So it's definitely, it does raise some suspicion. Most of these processes or deleted files you would see are Windows updates remnants. So there's a .manifest file, there's a .dll, .png, and by .png I mean the basic desktop.png that you get. So there's no user context executables that I found. Maybe the malware had already executed in memory and clean traces effectively. Right, so that's there. As you already know, malware or specifically ransomware files are generally known for deleting specific traces. So as soon as they execute, they're going to spread, they're going to propagate, and they're going to delete where they started from, so the source. Now, one of the reasons for doing this forensic analysis is to be able to uncover what is the source, where did that start from. And the first executable that you see on the screen was the same executable that I was trying to investigate in my infected VM, okay? So a weird name, .exe. This was a randomized name, so it doesn't have any system directory. It matches the live process that you just observed. I also saw some other suspicious deleted files, which were, for example, the update.vbs. So this is a script file that it used for payload execution or persistence. Sysupdater, the task scheduler. So basically, this was a masquerading technique because it came itself as task, .ched, and it was a classic trick because it's found beneath the task, but it's actually deleted. There was no scheduled tasks which were running on the machine, and I tried to identify, but the Windows files also didn't have anything prominent to give as evidence to that. So deleting that and several of these files was just suspicious. There was a readme.txt, and this was on the desktop. Now, this was a potential ransom node. I had already isolated my VM, so I'm pretty sure it dropped the ransom node, but I got that in my analysis eventually. This is the common indicator that the user, so basically the ransomware had executed. It had already encrypted all of the VM that was there. So all of the above that you see, all of these files are basically suspicious items and deleted files in the autopsy folder, meaning that the malware likely tried to self-delete itself, so self-deleting its own source after it had executed. And this is very common between ransomware droppers and wipers. Now, there's some evidence and correlation of behavior to these suspicious deleted files. Till now, I was only suspicious, but I tried to match that to my own timeline. And all of these files basically had some reasonable behavior of why it was that way. So for example, the first one was deleted right after execution, and then it propagated and dropped some payloads in different user and temp files. So this is malware payload removing itself post-infection. Then the other files, as you would see, there's some, the ransom node, there's persistence techniques, and of course the last one is just a configuration file which was removed, so probably it contained runtime or key data. So several of these artifacts within the malware lifecycle, they were discovered in the deleted file section. So very important to note that a major bunch of the source of where that ransomware attack probably started is probably in the deleted files. They also include the randomized executable. Now, basically, this is just a basic self-destruct routine post-execution of the ransomware, including the sample that I'm using. Now, the next thing that I went to was investigating the installed programs. So, as you can already see, these are I'd already installed a bunch of tools on that specific VM. So, for example, I'd installed Ghidra or Procmon and other different tools. But now, when you see these installed programs, the system update service, Windows security update, the task scheduler update, sys updater, so all of these are just specific updates which didn't have any place or time to be there, okay? I was not updating anything. I was just running and doing some basic analysis with that. So the reason for suspicion was that, for example, there was a generic name not matching any vendor. I tried to check the file source, and most of these installed programs are supposedly expected analysis tools, but after a few entries, you see their naming and installation patterns are kind of consistent with masquerading malware components. So they actually align with the whole deleted artifacts under app data and temp. So that may suggest that the payload briefly registered itself as a system component before self-deletion. And as I told you already, it tried to propagate from seeming legitimate Windows files. So these masquerading patterns and the WMIC was launched repeatedly. Now, this is a land, if I'm saying that right, living off the land technique. So basically, the malware tried to blend in with legitimate Windows components by registering as a fake system update service. And as you can already see, there are different processes that were launched. For example, repeated WMIC executions. This was also shown in the reverse engineering. So malware is using the built-in Windows management instrumentation for discovery and persistence. Okay. And then there's deleted scripts and DLLs and temps. So this is basically just for staging files for execution or privilege escalation, and eventually it was later wiped. And there's also the README text. That's a potential ransom note, of course. I cannot confirm for sure. So these are just the basic patterns of the ransomware. Now, I also found some extremely suspicious artifacts in the user context. Since the malware or the ransomware was acting as a user on the VM, this user suspicious items export from autopsy is basically listing all the files, registry keys, or executables that had been in the user folder. So you would see some extremely unusual names or location in the app data temp, for example, and basically, Autopsy's suspicious items module identified these artifacts as ransomware-style activity, and it was confirmed. Why? Because, of course, they included the whole randomly executable name, the first process that we were checking out. There were script loaders, okay, and then there were masquerading system files. And then, of course, the ransom note. So basically, this one just reinforces the hypothesis that it is a user-impacting malicious behavior, and it was trying its best probably to escalate its privileges or just try to move up. I'm going to go to the next slide. So I tried to wrap this presentation extremely quick just to be in time. These suspicious artifacts that you can see over here, they can be classified as specific types. For example, there's an executable, there's a script, there's a DLL, there's a fake system binary, a text file, a configuration file. And what is the indicator of compromise for this? The first one is definitely a primary payload, so it correlates with the whole live process of infecting your VM. The second is a script persistence agent. The third one, definitely probably a side-loaded library, and it was already aiding with other system updates. And the task scheduler, of course, it was only for persistence, so a fake binary system. And the ransom note, and apart from that, finally, it was the encryption configuration. So all of these artifacts exhibit classic post-infection behavior. You have the random naming, you have the execution from user-level paths, and combined, they actually suggest an infection that achieved execution, persistence, and user impact. I don't have a lot of information related with this, but I do have a documentation that is extremely detailed in terms of the forensic and reverse engineering analysis that I did for TeslaCrypt. So basically, this investigation is just to show that the system was infected by a masquerading malware. Okay, TeslaCrypt, I would say TeslaCrypt is not really limited to just that. There's a lot more, but now just investigating that on a Windows level and just using the main or normal users abusing the use of legitimate tools like WMIC and persistence after deleting the payloads is just common behavior for a ransomware. So this is this is kind of my conclusion. Do you have any questions related to this this presentation? I know it was a bit brief, but there you go. No?
You did great. All right. That was a lot.
Thank you.
Wait, we might have questions. Give it a second.
Sure.
Give people a chance to think for a second what they want to ask.
Are you guys not interested to reverse engineer ransomware? I mean, it could be a high-paying job.
There's a lot of people who... My mic died.
Speaking.
Well, no question. Oh, that's loud. What was the question? Who was it?
Thank you. Thank you for the interesting presentation. So I'm wondering if you have some experience, observed some ransomware samples that do anti-reverse engineering techniques. So, for instance, if they detect that they are executed in a VM, or if they detect debuggers and stuff like that. If you have some, maybe some insights on this. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to confirm. You're asking me about malware samples that you can acquire online. Is that correct?
So malware samples that use anti-reverse engineering techniques.
Yes.
So that means that if it's commonly the case for ransomware, or can you execute them simply in your VM and you get you can trace everything what they are doing, or are they really doing anti-reverse engineering tricks? So yeah, if you have some insights on this.
I would personally suggest that you take some neutralized samples from GitHub. For example, this Tesla crypt sample itself, it's real ransomware. Yes, you get the whole fake ransom, you get the whole ransom note, and then you get the whole encryption, but it's still a neutralized sample. So generally, ransomware is extremely nefarious for your own computer. So unless and until you have an extremely isolated environment, or even on your personal laptop, I would not suggest actually downloading a real ransomware. Try a neutralized sample. You can find them on GitHub. You can find them online on several resources. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
We have another question here.
Thank you. That was an interesting talk. With this Tesla crypt sample, did you observe any file extension changing? Like oftentimes, I mean, Akira or whatever ransomware we're seeing nowadays, they'll encrypt all the files and set a certain file extension. And a second question, there was the deleted files, and one of those was a script and some persistence and a configuration file. Were you able to actually recover these or view these to validate that they were bad? And I'm interested in the configuration file particularly. Were you able to recover what was inside this config file?
So yes, you do have a lot of, so the malware that I was reversing, the Tesla crypt, is actually, it's actually a C sample. It's written in the C programming language. So it was actually changing, several extensions. When I started, it was a .bin file, and it turned into an executable, I don't know how, and then it kept moving on to DLL files and several other files. So it's very difficult to centralize everything unless you have the forensic tools. Yeah.
Sorry, I think there's a misunderstanding. I didn't ask the question. When you see ransomware execute on victim machines, we typically observe the file extensions of PDFs, TXTs, common files that the adversary would want to encrypt change. It may change to .akira or .devman, depending on the ransomware sample. Was there like a TrueCrypt file extension for the encrypted files?
You're asking me for the decryptor, is that correct?
I was wondering if when the files are encrypted, do they change the file extension? Do they change the name of the file to indicate it has been encrypted?
Yes.
Okay.
That's there. I didn't change, actually I didn't wait for the entire VM to be encrypted. I kind of stopped and terminated the process right before it encrypted my entire VM because it might be, I did read the signs and I was analyzing a bit. It could have escaped my VM. It's that much of a strong sample. That is why I had to terminate the process. But I do understand your concern, and it's there. It does change the,
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angshita.
Thank you so much.